Hello again, everyone. Edwin Lerner back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Mercury making a square opposition or inconjunct aspect to the natal Chiron. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Mercury, they could be about communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, neighbors, cousins, analysis. And when transit Mercury is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Chiron, well, this may manifest in communications, assimilating information, mobility, siblings, cousins, neighbors, and analysis may conflict. It could be matters with the physical, it could be physical and emotional wounds or suffering. If there's some kind of emotional suffering, you may not really feel like interacting with like mercurial people, I would say Mercury people like siblings, cousins, or neighbors, or maybe people that were even prominent in your early education or in short journeys. There might be physical issues that are maybe conflicting with driving, for example, your mobility. I mean, whether you're just walking or trying to drive, if you have your natal Chiron in Aquarius, there might be issues, say with the shins or the calves, the lower legs, that might be making it harder to move around, to really be involved in short journeys, to drive. Keep in mind, the transits of Mercury do not last very long. They're in days, but they do last longer than transits of the Moon. Transits of the Moon last on average about 10 hours, so they're quicker than the transits of Mercury. Of course, if Mercury is going retrograde during this transit, it's going to last a little bit longer. If it goes, say, if it starts out direct, and then in a few days it goes retrograde, you may have this transit a little longer than just a few days or so. But this is but anyway, another way this may manifest, it could also be where it might be harder. You mean you might be, trying to analyze, any suffering, whether it's physical or emotional, ones might be more taxing at this time, um, more so than usual. It may be harder to, talk about, the things that you may feel inept in. Say if your natal Chiron is in Gemini and or the third house, it might actually be connected with issues that regarding articulating things or being able, to process information, or your intellectual ability. There might be, you might feel some ineptitude in that, but it might be more difficult to talk about that more so than usual. And Chiron is also associated with the deepest pain and wound that we may be experiencing. So if we're trying to, learn something at this time or process or assimilate information, it might be a little harder because there might be some distraction with the, there's some kind of emotional wound that's very deep that you may be dealing with at this time. It could be, say, if it's Pisces, if you have your natal Chiron in Pisces in the second house as an example, it might be something connected with betrayal and deception through money. Maybe, you got duped monetarily, and maybe it's happened more than one time, and it might be just, just some gullibility connected with that, and maybe you're just, you're still feeling some suffering because of that. Now, keep in mind that Chiron is the wounded healer. It can reflect, ways that we could help others in which we're inept in helping ourselves. So it's about helping and healing others. So it might be a time too where there might be some, maybe you have to go on some errand, or there's a short journey, or there's matters pertaining to siblings, cousins, or neighbors that might conflict with you trying to help other people at this time. Or maybe it's hard for you maybe to understand, or think of the ways to actually, utilize that Chiron energy, and how you're actually, going to help someone. And say if your natal Chiron is in Scorpio and or the eighth house, it might be, trying to decide, well, Am I going to help, through monetary support or moral, emotional support? How am I going to help this particular individual or individuals? Now, Chiron is also, it's associated with the anguish that we have to, one may have to deal with if, say you have this, say in the, the 10th house. It could be a dominant parent that might have passed away, or the relationship with the dominant parent, which is often the father, might have been strained. Maybe there's some anguish in connection with that, or there's, the relationship is dissipated, and it might be caused, whether it's due to literal death or a figurative one of that person. And also, too, this is about, again, Chiron could be connected where we feel that sense of ineptitude and our lack, what we maybe don't really feel we have in our lives. And the thing is, when you have this transit, it might be hard to understand, truly, what the reason is why we don't have. Excuse me, people, sorry. And if say if again going back, say if Chiron is in Taurus or the second house, it might be things of a monetary or material nature that maybe one doesn't have, or there's a sense of lack, and maybe you don't really quite understand why the situation is the way it is, or what to really do about it. Now, anyway, the thing is, too, another way this may manifest and pan out, it could be all siblings, cousins, neighbors, people that were prominent, your early education, short journeys. They might conflict with what you're trying to do in terms of helping, healing other people. Now, say if the natal Chiron is in Aquarius in the 12th house as an example, maybe it's helping through tech labs, which could be Aquarius for those less fortunate, which is the 12th house, such as inner city kids, maybe trying to give them the opportunity to innovate, maybe through this, maybe generate income as well. Now, another thing, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be local transportation issues. Maybe they conflict with physical related matters, or reiterate, what I was saying earlier in that. Now, say if the natal Chiron is in Scorpio as an example, maybe there's some issues with the bladder or the colon or the prostate that are quite problematic. Maybe there's pain there, or the groin. And this might be conflicting with maybe driving, moving around, mobility issues in general. And also it might be harder, at this time to really maybe really talk about, it could talk about things, or or maybe receiving news that might be required, which might be connected with something where you feel inept. And now, say for example, if the natal Chiron is in Aries, maybe this could manifest in news regarding maybe doing something with self-defense or combat training, something connected with speech therapy. At this time as well, there may be some difficulty in articulating your deepest wound at this time. Now, say, for example, if your natal Chiron is in Leo in the 4th house, there could be issues with trying to attain dominance in your home life, and maybe it's harder to discuss these things. Maybe trying to discuss this or convey these issues might cause more upsetment. Or it could be maybe you were dominated by somebody that was very domineering in your home life for a number of years, and that might be something where it might be harder to actually articulate. Or say if Pisces is in the 11th, natal Chiron is in Pisces in the 11th house is another example. Maybe there's some betrayal through a friend, or deception through a friend. It might be hard to really discuss. That might have caused you some suffering. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now in some cases too, keep in mind, anatomically, Mercury is connected with the hands, arms, breathing, lungs, and nerves. So if you have any issues with these, maybe they're exacerbated at this time because you're talking about that planet Mercury connected with what I just described, making it basically an adverse aspect to your natal Chiron, which can be about physical related matters. But what it may do as well, it might, if you're experiencing problems, something connected, physical issues connected with Mercury, maybe that might exacerbate some emotional wounds you're going through, because obviously, if you're going through some emotional suffering, you have something physical added onto it, then of course it might make it harder to deal with the emotional suffering, unfortunately. It might make those things seem worse than they actually are. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Leonard saying stay well.